Welcome to Sleep Time Stories, where history whispers you to sleep. The crackle of firewood, as the flames dance in the hearth, shadows stretch across the stone walls of a forgotten castle chamber. Outside, the world is caught between silence and storm, a time when empires rose and crumbled, when faith shaped destiny, and when men and women lived lives so different, yet somehow so familiar to our own. This is the age we call the medieval world. Not just Europe, with its knights and castles, but a vast web of civilizations, Mongol horsemen thundering across the steppes, Egyptian rulers guarding the Nile under the crescent of the Mamluks, and Mughal courts in Hindustan preparing to craft gardens that mirrored paradise itself. But our journey begins. Here in Europe, the turning of ages. The medieval world did not arrive suddenly. It crept in like fog at dawn. The collapse of the mighty Roman Empire had left Europe fragmented, vulnerable, and lost. Roads that once connected kingdoms crumbled into dust. Cities shrank, trade slowed, and silence fell where once there had been Roman order. Yet within this silence, seeds of a new age were taking root. Peasants worked the fields, lords fortified their keeps, and churches spread their influence across every corner of life. The medieval age was not simply dark as many imagine. It was alive with transformation. Picture a small village somewhere in the rolling hills of France in the 11th century. Mud paths wind between timber cottages, smoke curling lazily from straw-thatched roofs. A blacksmith hammers iron into tools, his rhythm echoing like a heartbeat for the settlement. Children chase each other barefoot in the dirt, while their mothers gather herbs and draw water from the communal well. The air carries the smell of tilled earth, of burning wood, and the distant toll of a church bell, summoning all to prayer. Life is hard, yes, but it is also ordered, predictable, and strangely peaceful. For now, castles and kings far above these villages rise the castles, massive fortresses of stone perched on hills and cliffs, their towers piercing the skies. They are not just homes for lords, they are symbols of power, of defense, and of fear. Inside their thick walls, feasts are held by candlelight. Tapestries hang heavy with stories of saints and battles, and armored knights pledge loyalty to their sovereign. A king's word is law, but his power is fragile. Behind every oath lies ambition, and behind every smile, betrayal. The medieval court is a stage where nobles whisper, plot, and dream of crowns. Yet while kings fight for thrones, the common folk fight for survival. The fields must be ploughed, the harvest gathered, the animals tended. Winter is always waiting, cruel and cold, ready to punish those who are not prepared. The rhythm of life the medieval day is marked not by hours of the clock, but by the toll of bells, morning prayers, midday work, evening mass. Life is steeped in ritual inside monasteries. Monks rise before dawn, chanting in Latin, their voices echoing against cold stone walls. They copy manuscripts by hand, preserving the wisdom of ancient times. Their ink-stained fingers craft letters with devotion, ensuring knowledge will not be lost to the ages. For the peasants, the day begins with a rooster's call. Fields are ploughed with wooden tools, oxen pulling stubbornly against the soil. Women bake bread in clay ovens, their hands rough from grinding grain. Evenings are spent around the hearth, telling stories of saints, spirits, and the occasional mischievous fae said to wander the forests. There is laughter, there is song, and despite hardship, there is hope. Shadows of faith and fear, but life in medieval Europe is never free of fear. Beyond the village lies the forest, dark, mysterious, and filled with dangers both real and imagined. Wolves prowl at night, their howls carried by the wind. Bandits wait along the lonely roads, ready to strike travelers. And then there are the things unseen, whispers of witches, demons, and curses. Faith dominates medieval life. The church is the anchor of society, guiding kings and peasants alike. But with faith comes fear. Every drought, every plague, every misfortune is seen as punishment or omen. In dim candlelit churches, peasants kneel before relics of saints, believing they hold power to heal or protect. Pilgrims walk hundreds of miles to touch holy shrines, their feet blistered, their spirits lifted by faith. And yet, in these same times, the shadow of the Crusades begins to rise. Wars waged in the name of God, sending knights far from there. Homelands into deserts they could scarcely imagine. Asleep stories whisper, "Imagine now that you are in one of these villages. The fire is low, the night is still. Outside, frost clings to the fields, and the stars shine in a sky untouched. By the smoke of cities, you lie on a straw mattress, wrapped in rough wool, listening to the distant hoot of an owl. The world feels smaller, slower, quieter. You drift, for a moment, into the rhythm of medieval life, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the chant of the monks, the toll of the church bell, the laughter of children in the fields. This is Europe in the early medieval age, a world both fragile and enduring, shaped by the hands of kings and the prayers of peasants. And as we journey deeper, we will leave these stone castles behind and turn our gaze to the vast grasslands of the east, where the thunder of hooves will soon shake the earth. The wind sweeps across the endless grasslands. Tall blades of steppe grass sway like waves in the ocean, rippling under the pale moonlight. The horizon stretches forever, without wall or mountain to stop it. This is the Mongol homeland, vast, open, untamed. Here, life is carried not by the stone walls of castles, but by the hoofs of horses. Families move with the seasons, living in round felt tents called yurts, their homes light enough to carry, strong enough to endure the bitter winds. Herds of sheep, goats, and horses provide milk, meat, and clothing. Children grow up in the saddle, learning to ride before they can walk. In this land, freedom is everything, but survival is harsh. Winters are long, summers scorching, and tribes often fight for pasture and power. It is into this world that a boy named Temujin is born. The boy who would become Temujin's childhood was not the life of a future emperor. He was born into hardship, his father poisoned by rivals when Temujin was still a boy. His family was abandoned, cast out into the wilderness. The nights on the steppe were cruel. Food was scarce. Temujin, his mother, and siblings survived on wild berries, roots, and what little they could hunt. The wind howled outside their fragile yurt, and the boy learned quickly that the world was unforgiving. Yet in his eyes burned a fire, a will, to survive, to fight, to rise at night. He would listen to stories told by his mother, tales of ancestors, warriors, and the spirits of the land. Under the stars, he dreamed not of simple survival, but of destiny. Temujin was captured by rivals, enslaved and chained, but he escaped. He endured betrayal by allies and hunger that gnawed at his bones. Each scar became a lesson, each loss a seed of determination. The steppe was forging him into steel. The Nile flows eternal. Its waters glisten under the golden sun, stretching across a desert that would otherwise be lifeless. Along its banks, villages thrive. Fields of wheat and barley sway in the breeze, and palm trees cast their long shadows. The river is Egypt's heartbeat, carrying not just water, but history itself. By the 13th century, Cairo had become the crown of the Islamic world, a city larger and more dazzling than Paris or London. Its skyline shimmered with domes and minarets, its streets filled with merchants calling out spices from India, silks from China, and gold from Africa. The air smelled of cardamom, roasted lamb, and the faint smoke of lanterns glowing in the evening. But behind Cairo's splendor was a story of warriors unlike any other. The Mamluks, they were not born into power. They were slaves, boys captured from the steppes of Central Asia or the mountains of the Caucasus. Taken from their families, they were brought to Egypt, trained with strict discipline and converted to Islam. They lived lives of hardship, forged into elite soldiers, loyal only to their masters and to each other. Yet, in time, these slaves would rise above their masters. When the Ayyubid dynasty weakened, the Mamluks seized the throne. Their swords defended Egypt, and their discipline made them kings. Imagine their training, young boys learning to ride horses as naturally as they breathed, mastering bows that could pierce armor, drilling with spears until their hands bled. They learned loyalty, strategy, and the art of war, not as free men, but as warriors bound by honor. When they rose to power, the world trembled. The Crusaders to the west, the Mongols to the east, both would meet the Mamluks on the battlefield, and Cairo, under their protection, flourished like never before. The air of Hindustan was thick with spice and song. The rivers of the Ganges and Yamuna shimmered under the sun, their waters nourishing fields of rice, sugarcane, and wheat. The bazaars overflowed with merchants selling silk, pepper, and jewels. Temples rang with bells, mosques with the call to prayer, while dancers performed in palaces lit by thousands of oil lamps. This was the land Baba dreamed of. Born in the rugged valleys of Central Asia, Baba was a descendant of both Timur, the Lame, and Genghis Khan. His blood carried the legacy of conquerors, but his youth was filled with struggle. He lost Samarkand, regained it, and lost it again. Ambition burned in him, but fortune was fleeting. When he turned his gaze southward, toward the rich plains of Hindustan, he saw not only opportunity, but destiny. In 1526, on the fields of Baba faced the mighty army of Ibrahim Lodi. The Sultan's forces were vast, elephants armored in steel, warriors shouting under banners. Baba's men were fewer, but disciplined. He brought with him a weapon India had never truly faced before: gunpowder cannons. As dawn broke, the cannons thundered. Smoke covered the field. The elephants panicked, trampling their own lines. Baba's archers on horseback encircled the enemy with deadly precision. By sunset, the Sultan lay dead, and Baba had carved his name into history. The Mughal Empire was born. Baba's victory was more than a battle won. It was the beginning of a new chapter in India's story. Yet for Baba, it was bittersweet. He longed for the mountains of Central Asia, for the gardens of Samarkand. In Hindustan's heat, he often felt like an exile. Still, he began to build. He planted gardens in the Persian style, laying rivers and fountains to mirror paradise. He wrote poetry, recording his struggles and dreams in the Babanama. His memoirs, In the Land of Temples and Sultans, Baba's vision had taken root. His descendants would nurture it, expand it, and create one of the most dazzling empires the medieval world had ever seen. The sea breeze carries the scent of salt and spice. Ahead rises a city unlike any other in the medieval world. Its walls are towering, triple-layered, stretching from sea to sea. Its domes gleam with gold in the morning sun. Its harbors are filled with ships from every corner of the known world. This is Constantinople, the Queen of Cities. Founded by Emperor Constantine in the 4th century, the city became the beating heart of the Byzantine Empire. To its people, they were not Byzantines, but Romans, the heirs of an eternal empire. Yet this Rome was different, Greek in language, Christian in faith, and Eastern in spirit. Step into its streets, and you will hear the chatter of merchants, bargaining over silks from China, spices from India, and furs from Russia. Monks in dark robes walk past soldiers in shining armor, while nobles ride in chariots toward the great hippodrome, where crowds roar for horse races that decide more than sport, sometimes even politics. At the center of the city rises the Hagia Sophia, its dome, a miracle of engineering. Light filters through its windows like streams of heaven itself. Inside, mosaics of gold and sapphire shimmer, reflecting both human artistry and divine devotion. Constantinople was more than a capital. It was a symbol, a fortress of Christianity, a bridge between East and West, and a dream every conqueror desired to claim. But life inside was not only for kings and emperors. Bakers filled the streets with the smell of warm bread, fishermen hauled their nets at dawn, and children ran through alleys, chasing each other past marble columns that had stood since Roman times. The city was alive, eternal, or so it seemed. Mountains of Japan rise like shadows against the dawn. Mist drifts through bamboo forests, rivers flow quietly beneath wooden bridges, and cherry blossoms fall like soft pink snow. In the distance, farmers bend over rice paddies, their reflections rippling on the water. This is medieval Japan, a land where beauty and violence live side by side. Among its people rise the samurai, warriors bound by a code stronger than steel. For them, honor is life, and dishonor is a fate worse than death. Their swords are not just weapons, but souls forged with care, polished to perfection, and carried with reverence. The samurai live by the Bushido code, loyalty to their lord, courage in battle, and a willingness to die rather than betray duty. A samurai's life is strict, disciplined, and filled with ritual. Before dawn, he sharpens his blade. At night, he meditates by candlelight, reciting poetry or contemplating the impermanence of all things. In the villages, children watch in awe as armored warriors ride through the streets, their helmets adorned with horns and crests, their swords gleaming in the sun. For peasants, the samurai are both protectors and overlords. For enemies, they are the embodiment of death. But Japan is not ruled by the emperor alone. Behind the throne stands the shogun, the true power, a military leader who commands the loyalty of the samurai. Beneath him, the great daimyo lords hold their lands, their castles towering over valleys, their armies ready to march at a moment's call. And so Japan is both beautiful and dangerous. A world of tea ceremonies and poetry, but also of sudden battles where life can end in a flash of steel. The samurai stand at the heart of it all, guardians, killers, poets, and legends. The northern wind howls across icy seas, snowdrifts over dark forests, fjords cut deep into the land, and mountains rise like jagged teeth against the sky. This is Scandinavia, a land of cold, hardship, and unyielding beauty. Here, life is shaped by the sea. Villagers cling to the coast. There, Wooden halls warmed by crackling fires, their people hardened by endless winters. To survive, the Norse turned to fishing, farming, hunting, and when the land is not enough, to the sea beyond. For the Vikings, the ship is life itself. The longship is not just wood and sail, it is freedom. Sleek and swift, it glides through rivers and across oceans. Carved dragon heads rise from its prow, striking fear into those who glimpse it on the horizon. With these ships, the Norse sailed further than anyone thought possible. They raided the wealthy monasteries of England, traded in the markets of the Mediterranean, and journeyed as far as Russia and even North America. But behind the image of fierce raiders were real people, families who gathered in longhouses, telling stories of gods and heroes, children who learned to carve wood, mend nets, and ride the waves, women who held households together while men voyaged for months at a time. Life was harsh, but it was also rich, filled with faith, song, and the unbreakable bond between people and the sea. And when the longships set sail, history trembled. The sun rises over the Valley of Mexico. Its rays spill across lakes that shimmer like mirrors, framed by towering volcanoes. In the distance, smoke curls from mountain peaks, and the cries of exotic birds echo through forests. Here, in the heart of this land, the Aztecs built a city that seemed to float upon the water. Tenochtitlan, legend says their gods guided them. They were wanderers, searching for a promised home. One day, they saw the sign foretold in prophecy, an eagle perched on a cactus, devouring a serpent. Upon that vision, they founded their city. Tenochtitlan grew into a marvel of the medieval. World canals ran like streets, carrying canoes filled with goods. Causeways connected the city to the mainland, guarded by towers and gates. At the center rose towering pyramids, their steps leading up to temples where priests offered prayers and sometimes blood to the gods. The city pulsed with life. Merchants filled the markets with cacao beans, feathers, obsidian, and gold. Farmers tended floating gardens called chinampas, fertile plots built upon the lake itself. Warriors trained in the arts of combat, their shields painted with the sun and stars. And always, above it all, the gods watched out for the Aztecs. The world itself was fragile, held together only by sacrifice and faith. The sun rose each day not by chance, but because it was fed by offerings. Without devotion, they believed, the universe itself could fall into darkness. Thus, the Aztec Empire was not only built on stone and water, but on belief, fierce, unshakable, and eternal. The desert stretches endlessly. Waves of golden sand shimmer in the burning sun. Yet beyond the Sahara's emptiness, a river winds like a silver serpent, the Niger. Along its banks, life blooms, and kingdoms rise. Here. In the 13th century, a new empire took shape. Mali, its roots lay in older kingdoms, especially the Ghana Empire, which once controlled the flow of gold and salt. When Ghana declined, new leaders rose in its shadow. Among them was Sundiata Keita, the Lion King of Mali. His story is told by the griots, the storytellers of Africa. They say he overcame hardship and exile, returning to unite tribes and defeat enemies. Under his banner, villages and cities joined together, and an empire was born. Mali's strength lay in its wealth. Its soil was rich, its mines glittered with gold, and its trade routes stretched across deserts and forests alike. Salt, more precious than gold in the desert, flowed in caravans of camels. Ivory tusks, iron tools, and fine fabrics crossed vast distances. But Mali was more than trade. It was a land of voices and memory. Each family carried traditions passed down by griots whose songs told of ancestors, battles, and the power of kings. At night, drums echoed under the stars, weaving music into the very soul of the land. And from these beginnings, Mali grew into one of the greatest empires the medieval world had ever seen. The year is 1453. At the edge of Europe stands a city that has defied armies for 1,000 years, Constantinople. Its massive walls have seen Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, and even Crusaders, yet it still stands. Traders call it the gateway between East and West, where spices, silk, and gold pass through markets scented with incense and echoing with prayers. But now, a storm gathers in the east. The Ottomans, once a small tribe in Anatolia, have grown into an empire. Their sultans have expanded across Asia Minor and the Balkans, uniting warriors under the crescent banner. At their head now stands a young ruler, Sultan Mehmed II. He is only 21 years old, yet his mind is sharp, his will unbreakable. From childhood, he has dreamed of conquering Constantinople. To him, it is not only a city, it is destiny. Prophecies tell that one day, a Muslim ruler will take the great city. Mehmed believes he is that chosen one. The Byzantine Empire, once mighty, has dwindled to little more than Constantinople itself. Its emperor, Constantine XI, holds out with courage, but his armies are few and his walls are crumbling. And so, the stage is set. The clash between the old world and the new, between fading Byzantium and rising Ottomans, is about to decide the fate of empires. High above the clouds, where the mountains pierce the sky and rivers cut deep valleys of green, there lived a people who carved their empire out of stone and earth. This was the land of the Incas. The Andes are harsh thin air, cold nights, steep cliffs, yet the Incas turned this land into a garden. Step by step, they built terraces on mountainsides, catching the sun, holding the soil, and making food grow where none should have grown. Their myths tell of Manco, Siapak, and Mama Oclo, children of the sun, God sent to bring order to the world. With a golden staff, they searched until they found the fertile valley where it sank into the earth. There they built Cusco, the navel of the world, the capital of their future empire. But it was under the rule of Pachacati Inca Yupanqui in the 15th century that the Incas truly rose. A warrior, visionary, and builder, Pachacati expanded the small kingdom of Cusco into an empire stretching across mountains, forests, and deserts. He reorganized society, built temples, and planned roads that linked distant lands like veins carrying the lifeblood of an empire. The Inca Empire, Tawantinsuyu, the land of 4 quarters, became the largest empire ever seen in the Americas. It was a world without horses, without the wheel, without writing, and yet, with order, precision, and faith. It rivaled the mightiest civilizations on Earth. The year was 1095. In a crowded field at Clermont, France, Pope Urban II raised his voice to the people. Jerusalem has fallen into the hands of the infidels. The holy places are defiled. Rise, soldiers of Christ. Take up the cross and march to liberate the Holy Land. A roar swept through the crowd. Deus vult. God wills it. From peasants to princes, from barefoot pilgrims to armored knights, all felt the fire of holy war ignite in their hearts. Some went seeking salvation, others seeking land, wealth, or adventure. Thus began a march that would carry tens of thousands across mountains, rivers, and deserts, into lands they had never imagined. The journey was brutal. Hunger and disease struck. Yet the promise of Jerusalem kept them moving. In 1099, after years of marching, sieges, and battles, the Crusaders reached the Holy City. They breached its walls after a desperate siege, and the streets of Jerusalem ran red with blood. To the Crusaders, it was God's victory. To the Muslims and Jews who perished, it was a nightmare carved into memory. And so, the Crusader states were born, Christian kingdoms planted in the heart of the Islamic world. Castles like crack-day chevaliers rose, and knights of the Templars, and Hospitallers guarded the roads. But the desert was unforgiving, and enemies gathered at the gates. The Crusades had begun, and they would rage for 2 centuries, reshaping the world. The steppe wind carried dust across endless plains. Hooves thundered, banners snapped, and arrows gleamed beneath the sun. This was the march of the Mongols, an army like none the world had seen. In the mid-13th century, Genghis Khan's empire stretched from the Pacific to the Caspian. After his death, his descendants continued the storm. Among them was Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis, sent by his brother the Great Khan to bring the Islamic kingdoms of the Middle East to heel. He gathered a colossal army, tens of thousands of horsemen hardened by the steppes, siege engineers from China, masters of catapults and fire weapons, blacksmiths, cooks, scribes, an empire on the move. Their first target, the strongholds of the Ismaili assassins hidden in Persia's mountains. One by one, fortresses fell. Their legendary assassins could not pierce the armor of Mongol steel. With every fall, Hulug's shadow grew darker. But the greatest prize still awaited. The jewel of the Abbasid Caliphate, the city of peace, the heart of Islam's golden age. Baghdad. For centuries, it had been a beacon of learning, a place where scholars translated Greek, Indian, and Persian works. Astronomers mapped the heavens, physicians healed the sick, poets sang of love and war. Its libraries, known as the House of Wisdom, held more books than anywhere else in the world. But in the winter of 1258, clouds gathered, for, on the horizon, the banners of the Mongols were rising, and with them rode death itself, beneath the vast desert sky of West Africa, where the sun scorched the dunes by day and the stars burned bright by night. A kingdom of unimaginable wealth began to rise. Its rivers flowed with life, its caravans carried treasures, and its rulers dreamed of greatness. This was the Empire of Mali. Centuries earlier, the Ghana Empire had controlled the trade of salt and gold, the lifeblood of the Sahara. When Ghana faded, new powers emerged, and among them, a lion-hearted warrior rose. His name was Sundiata Keita, remembered as the founder of Mali. Stories say he was born crippled, unable to walk as a child, but destined by prophecy to lead. He overcame his weakness, fought rival kings, and united his people under one banner by the 13th century. Mali stretched across the savannas and deserts, from the Atlantic coast to the heart of the Sahara. Its wealth came from gold mines in Bambouk and Bure, and from the endless caravans that carried salt across the desert sands. But Mali was not only rich in gold, it was rich in spirit, in culture, and in vision, and soon, under one man, it would shine brighter than any other kingdom on earth. That man was Mansa Musa. The world remembers the fall of Rome in 476 CE as the end of an age. But in truth, Rome did not die that day. It simply moved east, beyond the ruins of the Western Empire, Across the blue waters of the Bosphorus rose a shining city, Constantinople, the city of Constantine. Here, towering walls guarded treasures of silk, gold, and wisdom. Here scholars debated theology, while ships brought spices from India and furs from the north. And here, emperors ruled for over 1,000 years, calling themselves not merely kings, but Basileus, Romian, emperors of the Romans. This empire was the bridge between two worlds, Europe and Asian, ancient Rome and medieval. Kingdoms pagan past and Christian future, the Byzantines carried the torch of Rome while crafting their own identity. Their language was Greek, their faith was Christian, and their spirit was unyielding. Byzantium was not just a city of stone and trade. It was a living legend, surviving against enemies on all sides, shaping the course of history and preserving knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. And so begins the tale of the last Romans, whose empire shone for 1,000 years, until the thunder of cannons brought its walls crashing down. When the Mongols thundered into Anatolia in the 13th century, kingdoms crumbled, cities burned, and the land was divided among small warrior tribes. Yet from this chaos rose a man whose name would echo across centuries. Osman, son of Ertugrul. Osman was no king at first. He led a band of frontier warriors, Ghazi's men who lived by the sword and faith. They fought Byzantines on one side, rival Turkish lords on the other. Osman's banner was simple, a crescent on the field. Yet his vision stretched far beyond the borders of his small principality. Stories tell that Osman once dreamt of a great tree, its roots spreading across the earth, its branches covering 3 continents. From that dream came the destiny of his dynasty, the Ottomans. Osman's warriors captured forts, raided villages, and slowly pushed the Byzantines back. By the time of his death, around 1323, the seed of empire had been planted. His son, Orhan, carried it forward, making Bursa the first capital, building mosques and markets that hinted at the empire yet to come. The world had not yet noticed, but a storm was rising in Anatolia, a storm that would one day seize Constantinople itself, in the heart of the East, where great rivers carved fertile plains and mountains kissed the clouds. There stood a land that called itself the Middle Kingdom, for it believed all under heaven revolved around it. This was China. By the 10th century, the Tang dynasty had fallen, and out of chaos rose the Song dynasty. Unlike warriors, the Song emperors relied on scholar officials chosen by rigorous civil service exams. Knowledge became power, calligraphy became politics, and the empire rested not on swords but on scrolls. Yet the Song were no weak dreamers. In their cities, black powder was mixed into weapons, the world's first true gunpowder bombs. In their workshops, artisans carved movable type printing books that spread knowledge across the empire. Sailors guided their ships with compasses that pointed faithfully to the south. Life in the Song capital of Kaifeng shimmered with trade, silk, and tea. Poets wrote of mountains and moonlight. Painters captured misty rivers in delicate strokes. For a time, it seemed the dragon of China would soar forever. But on the northern steppes, a storm was gathering. Horsemen under a man named Temujin, who the world would call Genghis Khan. The land of the midnight sun was harsh and unforgiving. Winters were long, summers were short, and the seas were cold and restless. Yet from this rugged world of fjords and mountains, men carved ships that would carry them farther than any people before. These were the Vikings. In 793 CE, monks on a lonely island called Lindisfarne saw dragon-proud ships gliding from the mist. Warriors poured ashore, axes flashing, torches burning. The monastery was plundered, its treasures stolen, its monks slain or enslaved. Europe trembled, for a new age had begun. From the coasts of Ireland to the rivers of France, Viking raids struck terror. But these men were not mere raiders. They were explorers, traders, and dreamers who carried their gods in their hearts and the sea in their blood. By the crackling hearth of a mead hall, skalds, Norse poets sang of Odin, the Allfather, Thor, the Thunderer, and Loki, the Trickster. These sagas were not just myths. They were a way of life, guiding warriors as they braved the stormy seas. And soon, their longships would not only bring fear, but also discovery, for the Vikings would reach the edges of the known world, and even lands beyond, beneath the steaming jungles of Central America, where parrots screeched and jaguars prowled, stood cities of stone. Towering pyramids rose above the canopy, their steps steep, their temples glowing with firelight. Here lived the Maya, masters of the stars and keepers of sacred time. The Maya believed their world was born again and again, cycles of creation and destruction. To understand the cosmos, they built calendars so precise that even modern astronomers marvel at them. A single priest, reading the sky, could tell when to plant maize, when to hold festivals, and when to offer blood to the gods. In the city of Tikal, pyramids pierced the clouds. In Palenque, kings ruled with divine right, their tombs sealed in jade masks. And in Copan, scribes carved glyphs onto stelae, recording wars, dynasties, and rituals in a script of mystery. Yet beneath the grandeur lay sacrifice. The Mayans believed blood fed the gods, sometimes the blood of kings themselves, drawn by obsidian blades. Other times, captives of war were offered, their hearts lifted high so that the sun might rise again. At night, the ball courts echoed. The sacred game of Pok-to-Pok was played not for sport, but as cosmic drama. The ball, struck only by hips and shoulders, symbolized the sun, and losing could mean death. To the Maya, every act was woven into the fabric of the universe, and while their jungles swallowed their cities over centuries, their knowledge of stars, numbers, and time would outlive empires, far beyond the castles of Europe and the steppe. Riders of Asia, across the endless dunes of the Sahara, a golden empire rose. Its heart lay on the banks of the Niger River, where merchants gathered and caravans rested, where Groyets sang of lions and kings. This was Mali, a medieval empire whose wealth dazzled the world. The origins of Mali are told, not in books, but in songs, the songs of Groyets, storytellers who carried memory like treasure. They spoke of Sundiata Keita, the Lion King of Mali, a boy once crippled, who rose against odds to unite the Mandinka people. His victory at the Battle of Kirina in 1235 marked the birth of an empire that would stretch across West Africa. Mali grew rich, not by sword alone, but by trade. Salt from the Sahara, gold from the Niger's veins, ivory from the forests, and even enslaved people, all moved along camel caravans under the desert sun. To control Mali was to control the arteries of commerce. Cities like Niani and later Timbuktu became symbols of power and prosperity. Markets bustled, Groyets sang, and the empire's reputation spread beyond Africa, reaching North Africa, the Middle East, and even Europe. And then, in the early 14th century, rose a king whose wealth was so immense that his very name would echo through history, Mansa Musa, the richest man the world has ever known. The world we call medieval was never a single story. It was 1,000 stories, whispered across deserts, sung in taverns, carved into stone, and carried by caravans across oceans and mountains. From the fall of Rome in the west to the great walls of China in the east, this was an age defined not only by darkness, but also by light. In Europe, peasants tilled the soil while kings and bishops clashed for power. Knights rode under banners, their swords gleaming in moonlight, while villagers prayed for a harvest that might see them through the winter. The clang of iron, the chant of monks, the laughter of children in cobbled streets. These were the sounds of a continent in transformation. Far to the east, on the endless steppes, horsemen thundered like storms. The Mongols, led by a man of iron will, carved an empire that tied together China, Persia, and Europe in a single thread. Their tents glowed with firelight, their arrows sang in the wind, and their vision reshaped the world's maps forever. In the golden deserts of Egypt, Cairo's minarets touched the heavens, while markets bustled with spices, silks, and whispers of knowledge. Scribes bent over manuscripts by candlelight, copying the wisdom of Greece, India, and Arabia into new tomes that would journey across continents. Beyond the Indus, in Hindustan, Mughal courts would rise, places where gardens bloomed like paradise, where music and poetry painted nights with starlight. Marble palaces gleamed, while emperors dreamed of uniting diverse lands under one crown. And across the Sahara, in Mali, caravans wound their way through golden sands, carrying salt, ivory, and gold. A king named Mansa Musa walked the desert roads, so wealthy that his name was etched in legend, his generosity shaking the markets of Cairo and Mecca further still on the islands of Japan. The code of the samurai took root: discipline, loyalty, and the pursuit of perfection. Temples stood in quiet forests, gardens rippled with raked sand, and warriors found balance between steel and silence. The medieval world was not one world, but many, yet each thread was woven into the same great tapestry of human struggle, faith, ambition, and wonder. And as we look back now, it is as though a fire burns low, the embers glowing with stories that refuse to die.